Labubu, Zimomo, Makoko, Taikoko. To some, a stream of gibberish. To entrepreneurial savants like myself, the 4 foundational elements of a Fortune 500 company. See, on September 1st, I set upon a strange goal: to understand a consumer trend in all of its forms, psychological, philosophical, sociological, historical. I wished to know from stem to stern the intricacies of that which interested me not at all. What I found disturbed, thrilled, and, maybe most crucially, enlightened me. Okay, hold on. I got a message for some of y'all. I got a message, alright?
Yo, DJ Ro.
Now, this one is for all of my optimizers, my card punchers, my time tickers, y'all who want to get in and out like a tetanus shot. No fluffing, no bluffing, no scuffing, talking bare minimum information. Tantrums at anything other than the raw, unadulterated bullet points. Put your hands in the air if you feel like any inessential information will inhibit your ability to produce surplus value for your manager to lap up like a rough-tongued dachshund, snout to saucer in the Sahara. Now prime your cerebellum for retention, blow them cooling ducts, prepare for transmission. Labubus are little toys sold by a store called PopMart, designed by a guy named Ka-Sing Leung. They went viral because Lisa from Blackpink wore one, I guess, and now everyone else has one too. Happy? Okay, now get back to streaming Task on HBO Max or whatever you were doing. Do you ever get sick of not being able to use your own dang phone because of spam calls and texts caused by data brokers collecting and selling your information for a quick buck? I sure do, which is why I'm so glad this video is sponsored by Aura. Now let's say you look up your full name and you find your private information all over the internet. Even if you do want to take down your information in this situation, you may end up stuck in a labyrinthine process. In my experience, I've even had to make phone calls to random numbers to get my own information taken down, which is absurd. That's one of the big reasons why I recommend Aura. They can automate removing your information from these sites and really keep it off. Not just that though, you see, Aura is all-in-one digital security. You can get alerts for your information popping up on the dark web, real-time fraud alerts, 24/7 monitoring, VPN, antivirus, password manager, and much, much more. Plus, around-the-clock customer support. So stick it to the data brokers and fight back. Try Aura for 14 days at aura.com/RoRamden. In those 2 weeks, you'll discover where your data is being exposed and sold. I'm not leaving myself vulnerable, and you shouldn't leave yourself vulnerable either. Thanks to Aura for sponsoring, and back to the video. What are Labubus? Well, Labubus are intellectual property creatures originating from a now elusive children's book anthology called the Monster series, loosely inspired by Nordic or Germanic folklore, specifically elves, kobolds, the mysterious household spirits adorned with impish grin and meddling disposition, may be called Brownie or Bogart depending on your national predilection. Ideated upon and designed by a man born in Hong Kong and distributed globally by a Beijing toy company called PopMart. Though maybe I've intentionally wrong-footed the explanation. See, Labubus aren't creatures, they're toys, or dolls, items, plushies, figurines, keychains, all in the likeness of one character in a larger line of Monsters toys. But Toy 2 rings inadequate. It invites the idea of play, and Labubus aren't necessarily for playing. Initially, the illustrator Leung collaborated with How To Work to produce what they referred to as art toys, but he eventually signed an exclusive license agreement with PopMart, who, from then on, fancied themselves as product manufacturers and partners of distribution, releasing Labubus and Makokos and any aesthetic iteration of Leung's creations that would sell. Though the prospects of his properties are undeniably commercial, Leung still considers himself an artist first, and dutifully produces works and exhibitions the world over, perhaps in the cocked shadow of his successful miniatures rather than atop the shoulders of their giant status. Maybe, though, all explanations of Wellspring are inadequate, because, in fact, when that question is asked, what is Labubu? Who is Labubu? Its evocation is purely rhetorical. Whatever answer given is not absolute or true. Whatever vessel stowed with the idea of Labubu you've arrived to the question atop of is more adequate a truth than any breakdown of folklore, locus, character design philosophy, even market value. An unknown bead strung on a line of brain-rot terms, sparking your interest or ire. That's what Labubu is. But why, Why would someone want the contents of a pan so clearly flashing? A seemingly useless little piece of plush, plastic, petulant ephemera? The reasons are manifold, of course preceded by the most obvious pull of the trend as social force, able to seduce both the impressionable and obstinate into procuring items they don't desire in earnest. Whether one sees an influencer, celebrity, stranger, or friend dangling the diminutive status symbol from their backpack, the message remains the same. Acclimate, pursue, purchase, dispose, regret. Along the lines of any other product given an auspicious boost by the spontaneous adoption of internet subcultures. Stanley Cups, Dubai chocolate, the artist as identity influence of Deftones, Duster, or Charlie XCX comes to mind. The monster series of figurines, headed by Labubu, have enjoyed a meteoric rise in both market value, cultural cachet, and social signifier. This falls downstream of both a string of brain-rot terminology it finds itself adhered to and the mass endorsement from celebrity owners of Labubus, including but not limited to Lisa, Lizzo, David Beckham, Rihanna, Dua Lipa, Emma Roberts, BTS members, and tennis phenom Naomi Osaka, who made headlines thanks to a $495 3D printed Labubu made in her own image, encrusted with thousands of crystals. The subsequent arrival of dozens of think pieces on Labubu in single file has made clear that there is no one true take on the rise of the thing itself. Wired reported on a 250-person Labubu rave rife with cult-like mania, and attendees desperate to be seen in the wake of a 518% uptick in Labubu-themed events between July and August. NBC News reported on a quote-unquote life-size Labubu that netted $120,000 at a Chinese auction. While reflecting on the growth of pop art and toys in contemporary culture, the New York Times reported a growing Labubu subculture with custom accessories sold on AliExpress and Etsy, and recounted a social media post showing a man stopped by TSA so they could check what variant of Labubu he received. Valerie Trapp writes on the very subject in her Cult of Labubu piece for The Atlantic, noting scarcity, surprise, celebrity influence, or the toy as a gay icon as proposed culprits. The Brandsider identified Ka Sing Lung's curious collaboration with Moi Na, an extravagant Parisian leather house founded in 1849, as a properly exciting indication of where the brand could end up thanks to its roots in the hands of an individual artist. Could all of this be true? That Labubu is a dowdy nonverbal indicator of cultural awareness and a stepping stone for the 21st century's pop artist as entrepreneur and impresario? Suppose that Labubus aren't even the product, but the experience of gently slipping them from cardboard and polymers or flashing them carabiner clipped to a Bagu backpack is worth the price of admission alone. From a practice unpacked, unboxing is a consumption practice. Quote, the process of unboxing has been codified into a consumption practice by the makers of unboxing videos and adopted by consumers into their own consumption practices enacted on some of their own purchases. Viewing unboxing videos as part of a consumption process, they generally come before the purchase, but the unboxing itself stands as an intermediary stage between a purchase and the evaluation. When a consumer watches an unboxing video as entertainment, it allows them a chance to not only learn and take on the practice, but also to have a vicarious emotional experience with the featured product prior to or in place of making a purchase. End quote. The goods aren't good enough, or in the words of anthropologist Daniel Miller, things ain't what they used to be. The high of the Labubu may lie in the anticipation before one receives it, casting doting eyes on its shop app tracking details, heartbeat skipping as the package crawls across nation and neighborhood, awaiting the dulcet tones of doorbell and delivery, a heat-seeking missile barreling directly left of center in the ribcage. A toy is an indentation of a society as much as it is the identity of one artisan, toy maker, or craftsperson. That seemingly ineluctable cultural seepage infiltrating and polluting our most delicate youthful pastimes from pretend to play. Roland Barthes writes in Mythologies that French toys are essentially an adult microcosm, later commenting on models of soldiers, postmen, and Vestmas that the toy here delivers the catalog of everything the grown-up does not find surprising. War, bureaucracy, ugliness, Martians, etc. In Pageant of Toys, a mid-century treatise on the history of toys and their relationships to children throughout various civilizations, author Mary Hiller writes so very many interesting things. Quote, if the luxury toys vanish, what will be left to collect? End quote. Quote, only in the 20th century, for instance, has the doctrine spread that to be young is something rather special and important in itself. End quote. Quote, when the gods lost their potency, then idols became toys. End quote. Crucially for our interest, Later in the book, she refers to dolls as effigies of childhood, stating that it could be thought of early dolls that their principal purpose was to educate their little mistresses in an imitation of the adult world. Even so, the toy is clearly not the sole purview of children or those in arrested development. Increasingly, toys attend to and satiate our higher emotional needs of entertainment, decompression, and companionship, spanning adult categories from skill toys to video games. This is all to temporarily avoid the looming influence of the collector, in regards to whom the Encyclopedia of Collectibles entry on toys notes a wide gulf separating the feelings of a child towards a toy and the feelings of a collector towards the very same toy. One could easily refer to Labubu as a toy or a doll, but it feels somewhat wrong. We don't play with them, we don't interlock models to assemble towers or arrange them as drones of domestic bliss in a proprietary Labubu dream house. Practically speaking, the play occurs at the moment of unfurling the wrapping of the item in a ritualistic commodity striptease. From that point on, it may be styled strategically with outfits or displayed on a shelf, but never quite played with. This is probably because Labubus aren't made for kids. They aren't marketed to them primarily, they aren't purchased most frequently by them, and the numbers reflect that. According to NASDAQ, PopMart's core consumer group consists primarily of women aged 16 to 35, with Generation Z and young white-collar workers as the dominant force. These users are mainly concentrated in first and second-tier cities with developed consumer markets. They are highly receptive to new trends, willing to pay for emotional value, possess a certain level of economic stability, and demonstrate strong purchasing intent. Young contemporary urbanites with disposable income, yuppies. From Consuming Hello Kitty by Amy Tai Lai, published in 2005, we used to just sell the characters to children 13 and under, says Randall Patterson, a vice president at Sanrio. But in the last 4 or 5 years, our customers have included college-age kids. Fans can tell that Mariah Carey is a devotee, and so are Courtney Love and US punk queen Exene Cervenka. The fetishization of Asian culture seems to have an endless track record in the Western world, manifesting diversely in cases such as the cultural affliction of the weeaboo, the 18th and 19th century French obsession with Japanese aesthetics and culture post-Japan's opening of borders dubbed Japonisme, the fawning obsession with K-pop idols perpetuated by incessant promotion, or something as small and quaint as the collector's market for small Japanese miniatures carved by hand, referred to as netsuke. This in part stems from the contentious Western study of Eastern culture, from Edward Said's Orientalism. Quote, "The very power and scope of Orientalism produced not only a fair amount of exact positive knowledge about the Orient, but also a kind of second-order knowledge lurking in such places as the Oriental tale, the mythology of the mysterious East, notions of Asian inscrutability with a life of its own, what V.G. Kiernan has aptly called Europe's collective daydream of the Orient." End quote. Obsession with the distant lands not just as feigned interest, but earnest escapism. When looking into the history of acquisition, collecting, and purchasing items of any sort, the topic seems to rear its head without much digging. In Pageant of Toys, describing the development of trends and design of magic lanterns, Mary Hiller notes that some of the earliest models were decked out in a pretty Eastern fashion with an open-work pagoda roof, to add to the hint of magic and mystery, later altered to an unattractive chimney design to accommodate the addition of a paraffin lamp. Earlier in the same book, she refers to the name of the East being linked indisputably, in fact, with every sort of magic and conjuring. From Russell W. Belk's Collecting in a Consumer Society, also newly in vogue is collectibles in Hellenistic Greece, where he discovered early Greek statuary and newly imported luxuries from the East, especially Persia. Oriental carpets, wall hangings, and sumptuous furniture joined paintings and statues in private homes. The city of Sicyon became the central location for artists and art details. Some of this cultural infatuation is attributable to the appeal of what was previously thought of as distant. Belk says of collecting in Roman society, quote, "Rigby and Rigby placed the critical juncture in 133 BC when Attalus III willed his art-rich kingdom of Pergamum to the Romans. As Romans began migrating there, they acquired an appreciation of Greek art, just as the Greeks had been stimulated earlier by the novelty of Asiatic art." End quote. The association of Asian artifacts as mysterious, exotic, or fantastical seems to present itself over and over, from no two alike, play in aesthetics and collecting. Quote, "Fantasy is also involved in adult collecting of objects from an exotic culture, such as primitive art or Japanese sword fittings, the objects being a way to imagine oneself in another time and place." End quote. From Pink Globalization, Hello Kitty's Trek Across the Pacific by Christine Ariano. Quote, What was once a dry goods company called Yamanashi Silk Center Co., Ltd., and established in 1960, underwent a complete makeover in 1973 to reinvent his company from dry goods to the nascent industry of frilly merchandise for girls known as fanshi guzu, literally fancy goods, stationery and other small items designed for purchase by a primarily young female market. Tsuji looked abroad for ideas. He devised Sanrio from a combination of San, as in many names of West Coast cities in the United States such as San Francisco and San Diego, and Rio, Spanish for river. The resulting name referenced not so much Spain or any Latin American country as California, home of his hero and idol Walt Disney. End quote. Addressing the gizmo, the thingy, often advertised, seldom stayed, innovative enough to flashbang the consumer, and inoffensive enough to enter the everyday life. The implement, the object, the widget, palmed, pocketed, stored, shelved, bought, sold, wholesale, individual unit not fit for resale, reused, abandoned, footnoted, tossed, caught, fidgeted, spun, cuddled, beloved, activated, connected, stowed, carried, accreted, agglomerated, consolidated, completed, bequeathed, betrothed, forgotten, clung to, dusted, polished, upkept, and unkempt. A quote from Creature Feature, the Ringer's oral history of the Gremlins. Fisher. We didn't have the name, and then it came up. Somebody was referring to the puppet as a gizmo. Get that gizmo over here. There you go. Dante. In Chris Columbus's original script, Gizmo was supposed to be a cute little mogwai for the first 25 minutes, and then he turns into the bad gremlin stripe. Finale. And there's no gizmo for the rest of the movie. Dante. Then while Steven was deciding on what the design should be, he kept turning down all of our designs for Gizmo, and we got the idea of making it the same color as his dog, and suddenly he liked it. Fisher. Steven's intuitive thing is he knows where the pleasure is, and some people want to avoid the pleasure because they think that that's pandering, but he embraces the pleasure moments, and he's always figuring out how to make something more dramatized. Dante. When he finally saw the puppet working, he said, I really like this character. I think it's a mistake to have him turn into the bad gremlin. I think he should be the hero's pal. He should be in the whole movie. Once was enough, perhaps. So how do we deal with the growing accessibility of every different kind of thing and every permutation available? Now there exists an increasing meaninglessness in form and function that pervades much of what we consider current and important to speak on that befuddles me. From interpreting objects and collections, quote, the first role of the object was to symbolize the people who created it. For the travelers, explorers, and missionaries before the emergence of mass photography, the object provided the major means of representing the exotic places and people visited. The original anthropology was largely practiced in the drawing room, where objects were a convenient symbol for actual peoples whose presence was neither required nor desired. The selection of objects is significant. The insignia of power, emblems of status, fetishes of supernatural power taken from colonial realms. Pieces were used to objectify the notion of the romantic innocent or the barbaric savage, depending upon the argument being engaged upon. End quote. Uncountable unboxing videos, listings with endless angles of items, every permutation pre-visualized and conveniently accessible, with its meaning copywritten to succinct perfection. What was the last object I acquainted myself first with outside the representation of it? Nearly unthinkable is the movie sans trailer, the product sans advertisement, the performance sans poster, the object sans review or unboxing. Through documentation, strangulation breaches intention, leaving all that I own increasingly frozen, fraught, and barren, a bed of aimlessness from which you can rise endlessly. Quote, faced in the mid-20th century with a participatory, relativistic, and synchronic consensus, objects retained the implications of the theories they had been used to support, and that had in turn given them meaning. Photography and other methods of recording visual information made objects less important. End quote. PopMart is the Beijing-based behemoth of toy commerce to watch, operating over 2,000 robo-shops internationally, enjoying 500% increases in stock valuation and a 375.2% rise of international revenue in 2024 alone. In 2025, its revenue has risen over 200% to nearly $2 billion. Initially founded by Wang Ning with a broader business model in 2010, PopMart transitioned into a sole toy manufacturer in 2014 and made its initial public offering in 2020. By 2021, they constituted 8.5% of the Chinese toy market. The Monsters series debuted in 2016, and Labubu has exploded in popularity only in the last few years, bringing in a sizable portion of their total revenue. Recently, they made the decision to halt in-store sales in the UK in an effort to de-escalate brawls over Labubu toys. I know my tone has been somewhat neutral so far, but if you're running the fade for a Labubu, you're a fucking loser. In the last month, Wang Ning's net worth has dropped $6 billion to a paltry $21.5 billion, making him only 14th richest out of the 1.4 billion residents of China. Poor guy. Addressing the elephant in the room, aging and generally becoming a quieter person has rid me of my unique talent for insulting the appearances of strangers or enemies, be it on the battlefield or via amassed correspondence across continents. Asked to insult Wang Ning, I might say his disposition is prototypical of one caught in an eternal LinkedIn profile photo, or a distinguished gentleman giving a lecture to an empty hall at a blockchain convention, mogged by the CCTV host of the same name. Asked to insult Ka-Sing Leung, I would say his form highlights a Gumbian predilection towards vertical stretch. Anywho, from Forbes, quote, a PopMart spokesperson attributed Labubu's declining prices across resale markets to an increase in production. The company proactively increased product supply to align with the needs of our fans and customers, the spokesperson writes in a statement to Forbes. The fact the product was significantly more accessible and a greater number of individuals successfully purchased one is a relevant factor. Really, it's just like the Notorious B.I.G. said. Mo money, mo demand, mo supply, less money, mo problems, 10 crack commandments, thou shalt not commit adultery. Speaking for myself, I love the free market and am looking forward to a long life with a well-endowed spouse that ends in property ownership, retirement, and a mysterious boat explosion that rewards my large-breasted wife with double indemnity payout. Labubus come from a long lineage of fads. Beanie Babies, Cabbage Patch Dolls, Tamagotchis, Yo-Yos, Rubik's Cubes, all once enjoyed a spot at the top of the pyramid, de facto rulers of the zeitgeist, preceding a meteoric descent into relative obscurity again. Along with these come miniature market bubbles, people looking to capitalize on the momentary success, hop on the bandwagon. In the case of yo-yos, some of the toy's most talented practitioners are desperate to reinvigorate the toy, activate another boom, so to speak. In From Beanie Babies to Baseball Cards, a financial application of collectibles markets, a collectible is described as being born when two or more people begin to compete to collect the same things. A key is the difficulty of obtaining the object, creating gaggles to clamor over one limited edition. In the case of Beanie Babies, the gag went a bit too far. In late 1999, they issued a statement announcing the cessation of all Beanie Baby production to mass despair, later recounting it and facing a public backlash alongside gradual declension of sales. From collecting in a consumer society, quote, as continues to happen with collections and collecting, fads and fashions may shape the content of collections and the rules governing what constitutes accepted collecting practice. But the same acquisitive and possessive motivations and the same feelings of delight with objects that are, for the collector and others of like mind, fantastic, remain. Not only as collectors, but as consumers, we continue to delight in the miniature and the gigantic, the fantastic and the spectacular. End quote. Labubus are the sort of perfect trend for a culture like ours, one increasingly disposable, despondent, and defined by a nebulous fear of whatever comes next. Nothing more than signifiers of awareness of internet culture, understanding of trends. Aesthetic communication, from personal style to the look of individual social media feeds, is a significant part of the way young people relate to each other now. Labubus have also made notable entries into the fashion world, joining the contemporary trend of toy collaborations with luxury brands. From the WWD article Labubu, Polly Pocket, and Hot Wheels, the playful toys leading fashion's childhood revival, quote, the appeal of the ongoing trend may be explained by its potential to offer a sense of soothing in a volatile world, fashion psychologist Jennifer Heinen told WWD. Objects that are small, collectible, and whimsical allow us to anchor ourselves in something controllable and emotionally non-threatening, Heinen said. On a deeper level, they reflect a desire to reconnect with emotional textures that adulthood often suppresses: tenderness, wonder, curiosity. When society expects us to be constantly productive, hardened, or hyper-rational, these accessories become tiny acts of resistance. They say, I still have softness in me, and I'm not ashamed to wear it. End quote. So people get attached to objects emotionally, and their investment increases the value of the intellectual property. When you want something really bad, you're willing to shell out for it. Combined with the randomized output, consumers may find themselves emptying their pockets mindlessly. Resale Calendar lists the odds of getting a, quote, Choice Labubu at 1 in 72, and describes Labubu as a product pretty much built from the ground up for resellers, in part thanks to the absence of a purchase limit during drops. Buddha was onto something when he said desire was the root of suffering. Is he still around? From The Philosophy of Money by George Simmel, quote, so long as man is dominated by his impulses, the world appears to him as an undifferentiated substance. Since it represents for him only an irrelevant means for the satisfaction of his drives, and this effect may arise from all kinds of causes, he has no interest in the nature of the objects themselves. It is the fact that we need a particular single object that makes us acutely aware that we need an object at all.
Did you call me a scalper? Listen, gentlemen, I perform a service here, and the service costs money.
Labubus make a lot of money, selling for twice their initial values and sometimes far beyond. Secondary markets produce off-brand accessories. Lafufus, dupes, are seized in thousands at a time in ports, both sea and air. In total, over 7.9 million counterfeit Bubus seized by global customs this year alone. The day I flew from SeaTac, 11,000 imitation Labubus were seized in that very airport. Altogether, the shipment was worth over $500,000 and was inconspicuously labeled as LED bulbs. from Why Fakes Matter by Mark Jones, quote, "Fakes are, before all else, a response to demand, an ever-changing portrait of human desires. Every society, each generation, fakes the things it covets most. For the priests of ancient Memphis, this was, as we have seen, the promotion of their cult and of their city. For a 19th century nationalist like Václav Hanka, it was a medieval tradition of epic poetry that would fire the heart of the Czech nation and lead it to statehood. For medieval monks, it was the relics of saints and martyrs that would perform miracles, attract the faithful, and ensure the endowment of their foundation. For Renaissance humanists, it was relics of a different kind, of that source of all beauty and enlightenment, the ancient world. Succeeding generations added demand for the work of famous artists, for things associated with famous people, and, by the late 19th century, for almost anything that spoke to them of the calm certainties of the vanished past. It may be significant then that the great growth area for faking today is not the creation of religious relics, national epics, or works of art, nor even some specifically modern area like the production of spurious scientific data, though that is on the increase, but the massive counterfeiting of brand-name goods. Most of the purchasers of their work know that at the price they are paying, they cannot be buying the real thing. They are buying an illusion. The illusion of status, of belonging, of success, conferred by the fraudulent reproduction of a famous name." End quote. So if not fakes, then what? Then we reach the exorbitant gray market, where the eternally reviled reseller leeches the blood from the authentic product, flipping it while cleaving product margins, splitting ravines between retail and resale value. In the 8 principles of the microeconomic and regulatory future of ticket scalping, ticket brokers, and secondary ticket markers, ticket scalping is described as simultaneously disdained by consumers, subject to the wrath of primary market competitors, and yet an inevitable presence in high-demand markets. See, resale relies fundamentally on the initial underpricing of the product in relation to the demand for it. If a company facing extraordinary demand refuses to hike its prices astronomically, scalping is a near certainty. When emotions get involved, the gloves come off. From measuring returns on investments in collectibles, quote, "Because of the non-pecuniary, perhaps even non-rational, rewards for owning collectibles, there is reason to think it may be possible to make extraordinary profits in this area. Collectibles are estranged from cost fundamentals, since production concerns are irrelevant once you are in the resale market, and the number of buyers and sellers involved may be relatively low. Such a market may be easy for a small number of persons to manipulate. Stoller provides a helpful list of suggestions for market manipulation, including publishing a price guide or catalog for the category of collectibles in question, and the potentially less labor-intensive activity of hoarding." End quote. Demand for Labubus is driven in part by their form factor, the blind box. First popularized by Japanese gachapon machines during the 1970s, the medium mixes objects of small size and intricate near artisanal craftsmanship with a tactile randomized payout. Imagine a gumball machine full of dozens of different toys. Gacha, the crank of the handle, and pawn being the toy's graceful plop on whatever surface it falls towards. Blind boxes, gachapon, fukubukuro, all terms for the similar proposition of purchasing something of unknown identity, resulting in a gambler's high upon securing the desired outcome. According to the New York Times in 2021, young women made up 70% of the gachapon market, which was worth around $360 million in 2019, with over 600,000 operating machines. Strangely enough, the design and delivery method of gachapon was invented in the United States, exported to Japan, and now arrives back to us through a Chinese company promoted by a Thai K-pop star. The casino-like atmosphere of blind box culture strikes some as predatory. According to CNBC, quote, "In an editorial on June 20th, China's state media People's Daily called for tighter regulations around selling blind box toys and trading cards to children under the age of 8, such as verifying buyer's age upon payment and requiring parental approval in online transactions." End quote. Regulations on children buying products primarily purchased by adults. Sensible and still confusing. Is this making any sense? From Economics of Collectibles Fighting the Simulation of Desire, quote, "Not every layman can see the value in a $50 piece of cardstock. This is because economics seeks to provide a transactional system of logic for human behavior, which often seems highly variable, personal, and irrational."
Whoa. One vote for Elias, one vote for Bissinger, 9 votes for Swope.
We all voted for him because we thought no one else would vote for him.
So Labubus come to occupy a testy yet banal middle ground between defanging and fetishization. On one hand, folklorish, imbued with mystique and mischief. On the other, dainty, harmless, and lovable. See, it turns out that cuteness is a lot less straightforward than you'd hope it was. Common sense might lead one to believe that cuteness is merely an adjective we ascribe to helpless creatures or things which neurologically evoke the adoration. But cuteness is more of an aesthetic category with its own boundaries and convolutions. From The Cuteness of the Avant-Garde by Sayan Nai, while the avant-garde is conventionally imagined as sharp and pointy, as hard or cutting edge, cute objects have no edge to speak of, usually being soft, round, and deeply associated with the infantile and the feminine. In describing a frog-shaped bath sponge, Nye notes that the aesthetic depends on a softness that invites physical touching, or to use a more provocative verb, fondling. It also demonstrates the centrality of anthropomorphism to cuteness. Realist verisimilitude and precision are excluded in the making of cute objects, which have simple contours and little or no ornamentation or detail. The smaller and less formally articulated or more blob-like the object, the cuter it becomes. Cuteness, then, could also be thought of as a sort of psychological strategy that can be deployed aesthetically for different use cases, especially profit. Look no further than the rising ubiquity of the cute creature in blockbusters and television, from The Mandalorian's Grogu to Jurassic World Rebirth's Baby Dinosaur, spanning from The Legend of Ochi's indie animatronics to the meta-realization of Puss in Boots' trembling kitty eyes, and tracing back as far as the Gremlins' Gizmo or the many squeezable occupants of Hayao Miyazaki's Painted Worlds. Nye says, in its exaggerated passivity and vulnerability, the cute object is as often intended to excite a consumer's sadistic desire for mastery and control as much as his or her desire to cuddle. As an aestheticization of the small, vulnerable, and helpless, cuteness, not surprisingly, is a taste quality first and foremost aligned with products designed for children. Again, we arrive at that frustrating predicament. If all the design language and use cases of the Labubu point towards a market demographic of children, why then do we arrive at a consumer base of young women in their 20s? From Francis Richards' 15 Theses on the Cute, professing its own demure and complete powerlessness, it gains power over and directs all interactions with it. Parents wait upon the infant, not the other way around. Simultaneously referring to and negating its own vulnerability, Cute functions as a self-fulfilling system, maintaining its image as 100% solid and happy and obvious, only by virtue of utter contingency. Cute stabilizes infancy, or the frailty of old age, or the foolishly unconscious actions of a supposedly competent adult, by reframing them in an atemporal, non-biological, and consequence-free zone, not entirely unrelated to the fixed reality inside a picture.
Welcome to the testing room of the Parallax Corporation's Division of Human Engineering. Just sit back, nothing is required of you, except to observe the visual materials that are presented to you. All right? We hope you find the test a pleasant experience.
What conditions are that of the present? What defines now? If asked, you could answer. You'd flip through your Rolodex of impending catastrophes and present disaster and find whichever rings truest on any given day. What symbols represent that? The big stick, the Tommy gun, the Hooverville, the perched eagle brooch, the doomsday clock, Mommy's little helper, the napalm lab, the backyard bunker, trickle down, Lewinsky. The older you get, the more it all flattens into one big fear. The more the young seem to overreact and clutch their pearls. As job markets creak and bend under the weight of hundreds of thousands of young graduates looking for jobs with none to be found, younger generations experience unimaginable anxiety. A Bloomberg article on China's professional children describes the lie-flat generation in China, comprising younger demographics opting out of the rat race in favor of enriching experiences, disillusioned by statistics as bleak as 3 million candidates applying for 39,000 civil service vacancies. An excerpt from Guys in Toyland published in The Atlantic, on the subject of kidults from 20 to 40 who work office jobs and harbor obsessions with children's toys. Quote, many Korean sociologists have speculated that the rise of the kidult is a response to the country's economic problems. Korea's economy was booming when we were growing up, one sociologist told Arirang TV. Such nostalgia or reminiscence could also give them a sort of psychological satisfaction. The kidult phenomenon could also have to do with the aging of Korean society. In 1980, around the time many kidults were born, the country's median age was low, just 22. It has since jumped to 41, making South Korea one of the world's most elderly countries, and is projected to rise to 53 by 2040. End quote. In the fall of 2018, the popular blind box toy Sunny Angels changed their slogan to "He may bring you happiness." An article in the Harvard Crimson called Trinkets and Blind Boxes, Little Guys Having a Big Impact on Gen Z, describes joy in trinkets and potentially healing your inner child as possible spurs for the purchase of these items. In Valerie Trapp's What's Really Behind the Cult of Labubu piece in The Atlantic, she notes the gradual disillusion of the barrier between adulthood and childhood, the $9 billion market evaluation of the kidult market, that 4 in 10 American adults sleep with stuffed animals, and the narrowing view of the childhood as determinant of the whole life. From The Art of Cute Little Things, Nara Yoshimoto's Parapolitics, perhaps nowhere more so than in Japan has the fan figure, with its incarnation in the otaku, been pushed to the extremes of mass cultural fascination. The stereotypical otaku figure displays an immense intimacy with mass-mediated fan objects, a highly developed connoisseurship of animated minutiae, a solitary mode of being, yet accompanied by absorptions into virtual sociality. We might think of the otaku figure as embodying the core contradiction of the fan figure in general. Big passion, little object. Maybe this is all too theoretical, though. These ideas of fetishization or adoration, people, at their foundation, seem to have a unique urge to accumulate. In reading texts on collections, whether academic or intended for laypersons investigating the values of their own objects, there's sometimes a remark on the breadth of subjects around which a collection can be built. Standard fare, bottle caps, stamps, coins. A bit more obscure, cereal boxes, airline sugar packets, Tiffany lamps, trading cards, trivets, tramp art, match safes, phonographs. Outright esoteric, tackle boxes, Isho Ningyo dolls, inkwells, Scopitone films, racist memorabilia, corncob pipes, cutlery, snuff bottles, sponges, pinball machines. If it can be moved to one's possession, indeed it can be collected. From the urge to collect, if the predominant value is representative or representational, i.e. if said object or idea is valued chiefly for the relation it bears to some other object or idea, or objects or ideas, such as being one of a series, part of a whole, a specimen of a class, then it is the subject of a collection. So too does the collector sort into a larger set of fellow collectors, people, and modes. Being a part of a society is being a part of an array. Clusters of people just like you, squirming about in vermiform bunches. Lumpy assemblages sorted by seemingly unascertainable methodology. As immune as we feel to fads, we dwell, cheek to cheek, in a world hardwired to market to us certain things, assimilate us to given proclivities deemed acceptable or trendy. From a neural basis for collecting in humans, the collecting of objects is a widely observed human behavior that is generally regarded as both benign and normative. Indeed, research in the area has revealed that the majority of young children and up to a third of British adults engage in collecting at any given time, rendering it as a pastime as pervasive in Britain as tuning into the World Cup finals. As customary as collecting has become, the history of the formalized collection is in some ways the history of wealth and the ability to acquire it at all. Of course, throughout history, the peasants thought of as glorified turnspit dogs had no capital to invest in exotic ornaments or hand-wrought tchotchkes. In the 18th and 19th century, traveling aristocrats cultivated cabinets of curiosities, stocked with oddities, curios, and ephemera from their journeys. This calls into interrogation what exactly is viewed as eccentric, galvanic, and acquainted enough to be plucked clean and stocked in a cabinet, abetting oohs, ahs, gaped maws, and wide eyes. From Mark B. McKinley's Psychology of Collecting, a cabinet was in part a symbolic display of the collector's power and wealth. It was these collectors who established the first museums in Europe, and to a lesser extent in America. Such aristocratic collectors included Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, Francesco I de Medici, Archduke Ferdinand, and Emperor Rudolph II. As for the everyday collector, the one who doesn't invest exorbitantly or fanatically peruse every artifact of antiquity for the final member of their repertoire, the reasons for collecting are manifold. From a press interview with Shirley M. Mueller, author of Inside the Head of a collector may hope to build a legacy by passing on special objects to future generations. This is a recognized reinforcer of the drive to collect. Other reinforcers include intellectual satisfaction, a feeling of becoming closer to past generations, a sense of history, etc. The collector is also a purchasing power, driven not just by necessity but emotional desires not easily located, potentially even impossible to replicate between two consumers. From Mark B. McKinley's Psychology of Collecting, surely people who collect things are at the apex of consumerism. While many persons see shopping as a chore, something to be endured, many collectors are just the opposite. Spending the weekend combing garage sales, antique stores, and marts provides an escape into another world that is both exciting and pleasurable. It gets the adrenaline flowing when a find is made. Today, with the advent of the internet, one can pursue collectibles from the world over and do it from the comfort of home. Then, once the object is found, the airlock seals and pulls them to the ground. Holding is great, coveting is exciting, but nothing beats the anticipation. From the collecting itself feels good to words collection interfaces for digital game objects. Recently, Watkins investigated digital collection practices in a variety of contexts, including one gamer. An interesting finding is that digital collections are more used than physical ones. People rarely engage with physical collections. What meal satiates the collector? For me, collection neutralizes a fear of oneness, allows me to prove that through myriad eccentricities procured, the ordinarity of self can be transcended. Unable as a consumer might be to fracture into a perfunctory militia of identities, goals, interests, unfit as they might be to see all people or say all things, through cultivation there is fruition of labor, groupings and subcategories, and sets of dwindling relevance whose superfluousness proves by sheer brute force of agglomeration accomplishment, domination of object, medium, or idea. The collection can be a sort of brain on display, an externalized personality. What proof does one need past the accumulation, the rich silt deposit downstream of impetus? I don't know, but I do have, having being the most final and true form of knowledge, and action being the poetic language of honesty. From simulacra and simulation. Today, what we are experiencing is the absorption of all virtual modes of expression into that of advertising. All original cultural forms, all determined languages are absorbed in advertising because it has no depth. It is instantaneous and instantaneously forgotten. Triumph of superficial form, of the smallest possible denominator of all significations. Degree zero of meaning. Triumph of entropy over all possible tropes. Nearing the end of our exploration, you might feel slighted or deceived, that there was nothing interesting or enlightening about Labubus at all, and I agree. In that way, I feel that nearly everything on social media these days falls into the category of uninteresting, unchallenging, and foundationally complacent within that which came before it. In Filter World by Kyle Chaika, he describes the flattening of culture by algorithmic recommendations and filters that gradually funnel us all towards lowest common denominators. Quote, "Normal is a word for the unobtrusive and average, whatever won't provoke negative reactions. Whichever content fits in that zone of averageness sees accelerated promotion and growth. While popular styles shift, like moving targets, the centralization and normalization persist. It might also be accurate to describe Filter World as dictatorial or feudal. We all reside online within spaces we have no power of, following capricious rules that we don't approve." End quote. Counterintuitively, is that not the Elysian fields of market capitalism? To appeal to the most possible people, one product for all and all for one product? Beyond that, the uncanny ability algorithms have to surface our subconscious urges by sifting through one huge sieve, stripping away the detritus and exposing our consumption for what it is, can be nearly sobering, floating us towards the truth of thirst and away from the dishonesty of discipline. From Revolutionary Algorithms, a TikTok manifesto by Tori Akers, the TikTok algorithm is not poisoning our brains, at least not in any unique capacity. It merely reflects the landscape of our collective desire for something bigger than ourselves. It amplifies our most secret wants. It soundtracks our deepest, dumbest carnalities. It is also fragile, ephemeral, and privately owned. 10 months ago, Vanity Fair uploaded a video titled Lisa's Secret Obsession with Labubus, in which Vanity Fair, owned by Condé Nast and valued at around $200 million, purchases and gifts Lisa, Blackpink member and global superstar in her own right, an assortment of PopMart toys. She comments on the secret rare Labubus that exist in each set, her tendency to buy the whole set outright, the taxonomical distinctions between the Akadate Labubu and the tail-possessing Zimomo, and likens the experiencing of unboxing to discovering a treasure. Each process of unboxing is dilated as to shorten it to less than 1 to 2 seconds. Scrupulously retained is the satisfying crinkle produced when tearing the packaging. K-pop Newswire values Lisa's car collection at over $5 million, comprised of a Ferrari Roma Spider, a Ferrari Purosangue SUV, a Ferrari 812 Superfast, Ferrari 812 GTS Mansory, a Ferrari 296 GTB, a Porsche 911 GT3 RS, a BMW X4 M40i, a Mercedes G-Wagon, a Lamborghini Aventador, a Rolls-Royce Phantom, a McLaren 540C, and a Rolls-Royce Wraith. From amusing ourselves to death, public discourse in the age of show business. It is an argument that fixes its attention on the form of human conversation and postulates that how we are obliged to conduct such conversations will have the strongest possible influence on what ideas we can conveniently express. And what ideas are convenient to express inevitably become the important content of a culture. The Labubu tag on TikTok has over 1.5 million videos, an assortment of captions and text from said videos. My 102-year-old grandma's Labubu. Break. Biggest Labubu restock at Ross. Break. My 24-karat gold Labubu. Break. The truth about the Labubu dolls. Break. Man loses it at store after Labubu he wanted is sold out. Break. When mom says no. Break. Please don't be ugly. Break. Labubus are demonic. Break. Find real Labubus. Break. Labubu isn't for you. Break. This isn't what I wanted. From the work of art in the Age of Mechanical Reproduction by Walter Benjamin, just as lithography virtually implied the illustrated newspaper, so too did photography foreshadow the sound film. The technical reproduction of sound was tackled at the end of the last century. These convergent endeavors made predictable a situation which Paul Valéry pointed up in this sentence. Just as water, gas, and electricity are brought into our houses from far off to satisfy our needs in response to a minimal effort, so we shall be supplied with visual or auditory images, which will appear and disappear at a simple movement of the hand, hardly more than a sign. Eyes closed, breath steadied. Something before me. A gestural span of objects splayed like bodily lumps draped on beach rock, one after the other, processional formation. Little army men, dead still in broad arcs, loping over hills out of sight, back up and over until vanishing over the horizon. Overhead, fluorescent rods seamlessly arranged like dead pulsar readings or shelves of produce, bones of light evenly flooding onto every row and column of each troop. Picturesque, mid-step or brandish of rifle, burdened with supplies, flasks, bayonets, plastic molded patches, chevrons, chin straps, guided up to their necks to QGFO3s or Baby Cobra Pluses, off to some function on heretofore unknown soil, steadied forever in a westward posture, fists raised, every shift their first and last. Scents of ocean salt follow dried mud, hoisted by a now stalled breeze, until there's nothing to smell at all. If only I could put this in my cabinet. It is 4:30 p.m. on September 29th, 2025. The ground floor of Bellevue Square, a shopping center in western Washington boasting over 200 retail fronts and comprehensive amenities, rumbles with vendees. A smattering of solitary middle-aged and elderly shoppers with unreadable expressions, lined benches and recessed armchairs with gray frames and chartreuse cushions. It is a slow day, tucked seasonally between back-to-school shopping and looming Black Friday sales. A Bellevue Reporter article notes a 2020 protest in the square that ended in looting, shattered windows, and deployment of tear gas at the privately owned Class A mall. Nearby, a group of people smashed 3 windows at the Bellevue Rare Coins, ultimately taking nothing. In the wake, Bellevue Police Chief Steve Milet claimed to have learned from social media of a group of gang members planning activity. This resulted in a civil emergency order banning weapons capable of bodily harm, including rocks, paintballs, flare torches, lumber, bats, pipes, and clubs. Today, the only indication of unease in the mall is a shifty-eyed security guard plodding about the elevated level in a tactical vest, afflicted with some kind of cervical dystonia or torticollis. He approaches me on the sky bridge as I'm kneeling with my camera to inform me no filming is allowed without approval from mall management, then retreats to a nearby overlook and glares at me until I pack up my tripod and leave. It is unclear whether management refers to Bellevue Place Management, located in the nearby Bank of America building Suite 215, or higher-ups at the Kemper Development Company, seemingly reachable only through call or email at info@kemperdc.com. The guard's disposition suggests this might have been the most exciting part of his day. In the southern reaches of the compound, somewhere between Uniqlo and Lush Cosmetics, a humbly staffed PopMart branch operates in Unit 179, uneasily shifting weight between an influx of curious window shoppers and shark-eyed fanatics desperate to purchase one of the innumerable characters in one form or another. Tiny, Skull Panda, Molly X Stoopy, Peach Riot, Kubo, Hasepupu, Ducku, and myriad more populate cubic plexiglass display cases how soldiers' keepsakes or period authentic meal tickets line the walls of a museum. The store is cloaked in shades of white and gray, with columns of incandescent rods lining the meeting point of ceiling and wall, and a heaving series of LED fixtures overhead, providing just enough light to see the ludicrous prices on the ever-updating e-ink display tags in front of the toys. Towards the back is a vacant reception counter backlit by a 60-inch LED screen that rotates advertisements. Lettering above reads Cashier. Inside, one employee carefully dotes upon the figurine vitrines with an anachronist feather duster, adorned with long black feathers, ambling from case to case, limply dusting, idly surveilling customer activity. The other employee stands at the door while greeting customers, harboring a fugitive emotion somewhere between boredom and grand defeat. She holds 2 fist-sized cardboard boxes sporting vibrant advertising material, each the domicile of figures that look to my eyes quite similar to those mannequin-sized characters lining the storefront, now all facing the consumer causeway. A security guard quietly paces the bridge connecting the mezzanine atop the river of retailers, parsing between civilians and potential miscreants. A young woman between 18 and 25 strides into the store, and I can feel the heat of her gaze on the nape of my neck. I move past the 4 shelves of Labubu merchandise I was scanning with my camera, and she quickly takes my spot, boyfriend tethered to her waist. She picks up a box containing a Coca-Cola Labubu, and mutters a remark I can't quite hear. Elsewhere in the store, the greeter's gaze drifts to meet mine, arriving with a subtly confused look. like she couldn't imagine why someone would stay a moment longer in the store without their limbs bound. So far away, doesn't anybody stay in one place anymore? It would be so fine to see your face at my door. It doesn't hurt to know that you're just time away. Long ago I reached for you and there you stood. Hi, thank you to Aura for sponsoring this video. Go to aura.com/RoRamden for a free 14-day trial. Thank you so much for watching this video. I'm at a point in my life where I need to build up savings or my life is gonna implode, so please, patreon.com/RoRamden for access to all of the music from this video that I made, custom. I made all the music in this video. I make all the music in all of my videos. I've got negative $145 right now. Okay, Patreon is the only way this channel remains feasible. This is my job, and I'm going to be doing a patrons-only commentary on how I made this video early next month, so make sure to swing by for that. I would really appreciate your support, and I want to say thank you to all of my patrons who already donate. I appreciate it more than you could ever know. Y'all take care now. I'll catch you later, probably next month. Okay, bye-bye.